Hello, welcome to the Cube Pod, episode 119. I'm Jumper with Dave Vellante. Dave, the salute to you. It's
Hello,
been
John.
4 weeks.
How's it going?
Salute down. 4 weeks, holiday. I took a vacation. Now it's back. Can't believe it's like 15th. January's powering away. Look at the schedule. Hundreds of events again this year lining up. The NYSE studio is pumping out. You were here. Boston's going great. Palo Alto, the studio. So it looks like 2026 off to a roaring start. IPO windows hot as could be. Tons of companies coming through. I'm seeing people come in. The New York Knickerbockers just rang the closing bell today here at the NYSE where I'm at in our studio. Obviously the East Coast
The
studio.
Knickerbockers. What do you know? Next thing you know, the Metropolitans will be in there.
They're all here. NYSE Wired program, a CUBE original, going great. Brian Bauman's got guests lining up. The NYSE Wired community's doing great. But Dave, this week really, was a 1-2 punch from CES. We had NRF, the National Retail Federation. They run the annual conference every year at this time, and it's really what's going on in retail. And again, like we saw last year, it was a retail show. We did AI factory sessions this week as well. We also had kicked off our healthcare series leaders presented by Rubrik. I want to thank those guys for sponsoring the program. So you're going to see a lot more healthcare AI tech, retail AI tech. We're going to get sponsors for that show as well. But retail, healthcare, all the verticals are popping. But retail, again, the AI operating system of retail is Nvidia. It's these AI factories. You're starting to see the beginnings of an operating system in these application-rich environments. Frankly, AI native transformation. I mean, retail is going to be completely transformed by AI. We saw signals clearly. I wrote a post on this. I did a trend report and then integrated the CUBE AI and pulled out a bunch of pull quotes from experts we had across the year, and from Nvidia to Zebra Technologies, Klaviyo, variety of others, all pointing to the fact that we're entering a new phase. A threshold has been crossed, as I wrote in my post, and retail and AI is definitely going to be absolutely game change. Commerce, as we know it, will be agent driven. You're starting to see companies we interviewed, like Zebra, record revenue because they got in agents early and had a lead on everybody else. So you're starting to see kind of that COVID dynamic where people who were in the cloud took advantage of COVID. So again, to your thesis that you've been presenting on breaking analysis, and we've been saying on theCUBE, there is no fast followers. You get the lead, you got to get in early and get these agents up and running, these low-hanging fruit use cases. And it was clear that that was going to be the key. And the physical AI is going to open up a bunch of stuff once agents launch. So the retail show is now a full-blown AI technology show. CES, completely revitalized with AI, once reserved for the 2-decade storylines of the modern home, the connected car. Hell, it's here. It's finally here. Autonomous driving. You're seeing all kinds of new technologies for consumers at CES, and that played right into NRF. And I expect this year every show will have the same AI theme, except unlike last year, Dave, it's going to have a real execution focus, because the risk isn't strategy anymore. It's execution risk, right? So there's no debate on strategy. Take the hill, infuse AI in your business. Now it's like, okay, how do we do it? And let's execute, knock down some wins, get some revenue in the door, top line revenue, reduce some costs. But really the clear line sight was, for the first time I've heard, execution, top line revenue out of the retail show. I think that's going to be a theme all year long.
I think we're in I was just on a podcast doing a bunch of the Data Gang guys. I think we're in the third inning. Everybody says, what inning is it? I think it's the third inning, John. And here's why. I think the first inning was like 2017. And when they were talking about transformers and diffusion models and these academic papers, and nobody was really paying attention, right? So that was the first inning. And of course, the second inning was the AI heard around the world in November of 2022. And I think now with agentic, we're entering the third inning, the third phase. And to your point, it's starting to get real. I do think this is the year that organizations are going to start, insisting on real value. And Floyer and I have been doing some research. You know how everybody says you got to get your data house in order before you waste any money on AI. And the research that we've done and talking to some of the leaders who are actually getting value out of AI is, well, that sounds good. It's actually the wrong approach. What you want to do is get your AI infrastructure in order, your database, your vectors, all the surrounding, tooling, which by the way, the most popular AI tooling, of course, is OpenAI. But get that in place and then get to AI as fast as possible. Don't worry about cleaning up your data before you get to AI. If you got clean data, great, bring it in, but use AI to help cleanse the data. That is somewhat non-intuitive. And what we found is these organizations, the big banks, insurance companies, manufacturers, we talked to pharmaceuticals, life science companies. They said, yeah, we thought that at first. It slowed us down. What we finally realized is get to AI as fast as possible. Let the AI help us get our data act together. One of the customers said to me, most of our data is still crap. But the AI helps us find the good data, extract what we need, harmonize it, go out and get other third-party data that we might need to complete the picture and get on with it. And so the first project, use case might take 15, 18 months. The second one's going to be faster than that, faster than that, faster than that, compressing it. So what they've realized is the faster they get on that AI curve, they can get on the flywheel, and the learning curve kicks in, which was somewhat non-intuitive. So I think two things. One is the organizations with resources, budget, and skills are going to figure that out this year. And then what about everybody else? And this is where I think Anthropic and OpenAI and Google come in, and maybe even Grok, certainly at the edge, where the large language model in and of itself, it's kind of doesn't matter anymore. There's 4 really good foundation models. It's the software that's built on top of that. And whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic, or Google that goes into the enterprise, they have to simplify, and it's like super cloud for LLMs. They've got to abstract all that complexity away and make it easier for people to get on that curve. And I think you're going to start to see that in 2026. And then you mentioned CES. The other thing I'll say is, we wrote about this in our last breaking analysis. Got another one coming tomorrow. What Jensen announced at CES is going to create a lot of gap between sort of the everybody else and Nvidia in terms of the economics of AI factories. And I think Sam Altman's got allocation. I mean, they all have allocation, but OpenAI, probably has first allocation. CoreWeave, those guys are going to get real advantage by being, tight with Nvidia, not necessarily competing head on with Nvidia like Google is with TPUs. Although Sundar Pichai says, no, we need TPUs ourselves, and they've got allocation, AWS with Anthropic. But I think this year, the narrative around Nvidia's moat eroding is going to erode.
You wrote a piece, I wrote a piece on the AI operating system for retail. You wrote a piece on economics. Gartner just came out with this data that said by the $2.5 trillion we spent on AI spending. So the trough of disillusionment was 2026. I had mentioned just earlier at the top about execution risk on AI. Data's got to be in place, got to get that plumbing. That was also part of my theme on the post. But I'm really curious on your resetting, not resetting, but you wrote a post on Nvidia and the economics.
What was the key? The economics of AI factories.
And resetting the economics of AI factories, because the AI factories, again, this came out in retail, and the retail people like to talk in metaphors, and they were talking about, we went from paper to the internet to mobile devices, which is basically cloud. Now we had AI, like you said, first inning was transformers. AI now to autonomous. So the phase shift is paper to mobile commerce, includes the internet and cloud. Now we have AI to fully autonomous systems with physical things converging with digital. So you're going to see retail, you got cryptocurrency as a currency mechanism, you got robotics, self-driving cars, L4, not retrofit like Waymo, but like full-blown L4 autonomous. And all that is grounded in networking, right? So I want to get your thoughts. As you look at your post in this AI shift from AI to autonomous, that's the zone we're in. That's the 10-year horizon. It's going to move super fast through agents. I think it's going to be the year of the agents for sure. But physical AI has already got the buzz, and people don't even know what that is. Obviously, physical is mostly in context to Nvidia around omniverse, factories, robotics. But what it really talks to is us, our lives, right? Our retail outlets. I think retail stores are going to make a huge comeback because when you combine digital and physical with AI at retail at the edge, that's going to humanize the digital physical connection. Agents are going to do all kinds of new stuff. So, I'm very bullish. With MWC coming up, we've been focusing on this AI at the edge. So, how does the Nvidia economics line up with AI factories? Assuming the big factories get built, big data comes in, outcomes come out, tokens and whatnot, the AI native applications. But when you start putting AI factories at the edge or in metro areas, all kinds of new stuff is going to come out of the woodwork, capabilities wise. I mean, it's going to be like it's almost a dream scenario on outcomes. And NVIDIA knows this. In the GTC in DC, I sat down with their telecom leaders. They're already working on reference implementations and architectures for edge. I'm sure MWC will be all about this. What is your take? Because how do those economics translate to that kind of edge? Because once the edge is locked in, you get the factories at the edge, and they're going to be different boxes. They're certainly smaller. You can't put cooling in these boxes. It'll be a GPU and some other stuff. Hyperconverged protocols, spectrum and unlicensed spectrum, wireless access, complete changeover. That's going to unleash.
I think I want to start in the data center. I think the best, I want to start in the data center. I'd like to stress that the best unit of measurement, it's not the chips, it's the token output and the economics of the racks. Not just a single rack, but a bunch of racks. And that's what Nvidia has really changed the game on, because they've announced 5x Vera Rubin in production. They've announced 5x performance, 10x the throughput. And our estimate is that's going to create 15x increase in demand because of Jevons paradox. And so that's the annual delta in value, we think in 2026, 20 and beyond, is going to really show itself. Nvidia's talking about like $500 billion in system sales over a 2-year period. So to John Lovelock's point, the guy from Gartner, enormous demand. Nvidia's at the center of it. I would also say, as it pertains to your question about edge, that's the sort of area I think Nvidia's going to blow everybody away in the data center. I think it's going to be interesting to see the business case for continuing on the path of ASICs, maybe because the demand is so high. But everybody's talking about TPUs. They're crazy about TPUs. I think NVIDIA is going to blow all that away, and that's going to become more obvious. I think AMD and Intel trying to play catch up. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that in the data center unless NVIDIA stumbles. I think where their opportunity is exactly what you're saying is the edge. And I think the edge is wide open. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is one of the most interesting startups for inference is Grok. And NVIDIA just sort of has done the deal with Grok. It's sort of taken them into its lair. And so NVIDIA is looking pretty good. You got Cerebras, but that's kind of niche.
Cerebras just did a big deal with OpenAI. It was a huge deal. I don't know if you saw that 2 days ago.
I did see it.
Have them on theCUBE, and they bailed because the news went crazy. A lot of people were counting Cerebras out. We've been following them from early days, and their inference performance has been rock solid. Grok, and it was now a part of NVIDIA, and you got Cerebras partnering with OpenAI.
Yep.
It's a surge. Who's got the power and who's got the inference?
My advice
Clearly,
is
the game is
get
over.
my two pieces of advice. Get allocations of GB300s and Vera Rubins if you're a customer, or an operator. And then if you're a competitor, go to the edge. Elon was building a data center chip, a GPU, and I think, realized early on that makes no sense, because he sat down with Jensen probably and took a look at the roadmap and said, I can't compete with that. But I do think they will compete at the edge. I mean, Tesla has a very strong silicon design with its NPU. You're very high on autonomous driving. Interesting. You think we're there. I think we still got a ways to go before we get to learning systems. I think we're not there yet, but we'll get there. It's coming. I think humanoid robots are still kind of sucky, but it's fun to talk about. Fun to see demos. We'll see those at
The
MWC.
dexterity of their hands on silly manufacturing is working. All right, so Nvidia is crushing. We'll come back to them always, as we always pound Nvidia. Love talking about that. But I want to talk about Google. Google's parent company, Alphabet, hit $4 trillion market cap this week, second only to Nvidia. And Apple just did a deal with Gemini, huge deal. That is very much rhymes with when they did the search deal decades ago, when Steve Jobs, let's just get this out of this business. They just did a deal with Google, and Eric Schmidt was at the helm at that time. Jobs was still alive. Now you got Apple basically capitulating that they don't have AI. Word has they lost some key people, but it's a smart play by Apple, Dave, to get that, because they need help. Siri's terrible. I mean, I use ChatGPT and Claude all the time, and Gemini, but Siri's terrible. And it's
Siri's
great that it
horrible.
responds to my voice, but the result.
Gemini's great. Gemini is awesome. ChatGPT, it's got its nuances, but I feel like they are gonna, keep leapfrogging. You remember the breaking analysis we did with you and Sarbjeet January 23. The premise that Sarbjeet and I came up with was OpenAI won't maintain its first mover advantage. You took the other side of that. It was 6 months ago, like, geez, John, looks like you were right. Now people are like down on OpenAI. Here they are, though, about to do a $100 billion raise at an $830 billion valuation. So it's just moving fast, and it's awesome. I would say this about Google.
Well,
Look at Google.
It's a game of leapfrog, right? I mean, it's like the horses in the track, right? One's in the lead, the other one catches up. They still got to end the race here, and it's going to be who's going to have the best product.
Right, and they're in the first turn right now.
They're all going to commoditize around the same photo finish at the line, so too close to call. I think OpenAI will continue to drive. They do have the edge. But I think the secret to these models is coming out of the data on theCUBE and the CUBE research that we're getting, is that it's who uses the models best for the data that's not yet in the big corpuses. Meaning LLMs, large language models like Gemini, have crawled the web basically to oversimplify it, and they got everything. So it's a matter of who can fine tune that, make it better, and make the responses more accurate. But at the end of the day, there's still huge amounts of data that's not even in there. And I was trying to get answers from early days of podcasting. I'm doing just some research on the early days of podcasting that I was involved in, and a lot of that stuff's not even on the record because those web pages are gone. They didn't get crawled because they poof. So it's complete history void of things.
The Wayback Machine doesn't give you that stuff. The Wayback Machine doesn't have it.
Wayback Machine, it has it, but it doesn't have like stats from other sources, right? Like
it's got logs. It's got the logs.
It's just that the logs, and it just doesn't have the data. Like I was just saying, hey, who's the first podcaster in Silicon Valley? That was me. And there was other podcasting companies. Odeo was a directory, and Podshow was MTV. But because the third-party validation of what that was is not even on the record anymore, so that's good. But what it points to is that it only can get what it gets, meaning the data. And so there's the enterprise data, and all the new data that's going to come in is going to be a sweet spot. That's why I'm really bullish on the edge right now and focused heavily on looking at the tech stack there, because it's going to be a simple architecture that's going to be tied to the main factories. But when you look at who can get that data and crawl it and customize it. So, Amazon made the bold move. We saw that what they did and reinvent by open up Nova, to be half baked, and you integrate into your models. You have your own frontier model. I think that is going to be that could be a dark horse approach, because the fusion of the data will be the key to success. Meaning, if I have data that's not yet in the models, one, I don't necessarily want to just give it away. And you got companies like Cloudflare saying, "Whoa, don't crawl the data." So you have this data um, cold war going on, where it's like, it's the data moats are being decimated by the crawling. So it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how that script is written. Does it flip the other way? The data holders
Could.
become the value, or
Or
not. I mean, to me, that's going to be something I'm watching very, very carefully, because I think it's going to flip the script.
or
And I
token
think
economics. What if token economics and compute go the way of like storage and compute with Moore's law, and all these small language models, which, we predicted this in the power law, so I'd love to be right, but there's a counter to that that says this stuff gets so cheap because of the advancements that Nvidia is making, that the large language models will do all the servicing through APIs, and they'll build a software layer to simplify AI, and they'll blow away stuff like Nova. I mean, there's a scenario
I
out there
think I
that
think I
says
think I think we are
it's,
right on the power law, because if you're
well,
if
hold
you're
on,
correct, and I think
hold on, before you go there,
yeah,
hold on, wait. So there's a scenario, let me just get out and then counter it or support it. There's a scenario out there that says that the large language models, all these other language models, they don't matter. Like DeepSeek obviously matters, open source models matter, but the small language models that, IBM's doing, or Amazon, et cetera, are going to be like blown away. There's another an adjacent scenario that says all the TPUs and ASICs and all that stuff, like Trainium and TPUs, that the business case for those is just going to deteriorate. That's what David Floyer believes. He was saying he wanted to make a bold prediction that Google would kill its TPU. I said, they're not going to kill it. They're going to hang on until it actually can be competitive, like Graviton was with Intel. But it's an interesting counterintuitive argument. Please pick it up from there. What are you saying?
well, I mean, I think first of all that the cautionary tale of Intel is going to scare the bejesus out of everyone in this business, right? So if you got
What does that
XPUs
mean?
of
What do you
any
mean by that?
kind,
What do you mean?
that means if you rest on your laurels and assume the
Yes.
TPUs don't advance, then you're dead, right? So I think that's a factor. I would be looking at the supply chain and the architecture in particular,
TPUs are
and
not going
saying,
to TPUs are not going to keep up with Nvidia. Do you know why? You know more about this than I do. Why won't TPUs keep up with Nvidia's roadmap?
because of the performance levels. Okay, one,
Yeah, but why?
but
Well,
there are,
why? Why? What performance levels?
well, one,
What
the
is
way
it?
they
What's the
architect
gate? It's the
the
networking.
gate networking and the systems, but there's going to be a scenario where you have monolithic systems that cost millions of dollars. A GPU is about 40K, okay, and
With
so
a
it
million
comes
of
down,
them. There'll be a million of them in the system. And
yeah,
Nvidia's got because of Mellanox, has the advantage there for scale up. And
yeah, but
nobody will be able to keep up unless they stumble.
unless the architecture changes, where on use cases where, say, I integrate a large language model to distill certain things from the language model and combine it with my model, I won't need heavy compute. So I think, TPUs, XPUs, Trainium, inferential, all these things that are chips will have to be reconfigured in an architectural way that says, hey, I
Inference
can
is
run,
dead. Inference is dead.
yeah.
Forget it.
So
Cross it out.
okay, but XPUs on the Google side, I think they will be relevant. I think it's going to come down to point solution like thinking around, okay, I have a use case, I have a cluster, it's an end-to-end AI native app.
Edge.
I,
This is where
I
edge
need
comes in. This is where your edge
also
comes in. They'll be useful at the edge.
it's
Nvidia
distributed
will
compute.
keep, Nvidia will keep 90%, 85, 90% of the data center. What they won't get is because they can't supply it. That's my prediction.
My bold prediction is that it's not going to be just AI factories, central core centers, huge data centers, and edge factories. I think there's going to be micro metro factories. So my bold prediction is the sovereign cloud game will shift to kind of like mini factories in metro areas. For example,
Interesting.
it wouldn't be unlikely for New York City to collapse the wireless and wireline connectivity into one big multi-tenant system, meaning it's basically an AI factory. right? You can run Homeland Security on it. You can run VPNs, corporate services that could be sold by the carriers like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, or whoever. You have Ethernet everywhere, right? You got Wi-Fi and Ethernet. Ethernet's great for backhaul. So the whole edge piece could be supplemented by a distributed architecture. We got major factory doing major stuff, edge for edge stuff, and then kind of these middle nodes that just configure and balance the network out. So I think the demand for consumer grade experiences with AI native applications is going to force the demand curve to saying service me, and that's going to come down to networking. So when you look at wireless, that's networking. So T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, they all have licensed spectrum. Everybody's got Ethernet with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is basically Ethernet. That's fast. So I think the radio networks from wireless will immediately align and become like transceiver interfaces, an I/O bus, an I/O connector, like on a PC or a system, to these factories, and they're going to be everywhere in buildings. So you got kind of the far edge, they call it now. The far edge is like the person, the humanoid, the car. So I think this is going to be something that's going to be very, very compelling, all powered by these data centers, these micro factories, these edge solutions, all working in a heterogeneous, distributed way. If that's the play, then factories are everywhere. And the idea of multi-tenancy and single tenancy will be managed by tokens and services and software. And I think Nvidia gets this. And Jensen essentially telegraphed that to me when I asked him in the analyst meeting in DC. I asked him, how do you see the edge playing out? And he essentially he gets all pumped up. He was like rambling on because he gets excited. He essentially didn't say anything like that would hurt the stock price, but he spoke in the tech dog whistle of there'll be, I connected the dots, there'll be micro factories. Jensen basically said that to me. So, and he was answering a different question, but he basically answered the other question by giving me the answer to the question that I didn't want to ask, which is, will there be micro factories? And I think there will be, because it makes total sense. Why not? I mean, on an edge device, where am I going to backhaul to? Okay,
So
retail.
Okay, so now play that back to what that means for industry, competition, for customers. Again, coming back to economics, those micro factories, I agree with you, by the way. I think they're going to be populated with a lot of Nvidia systems, and there'll be other systems. I'm not saying every other company is going to go away, but the industry is littered with firms that tried to compete with Intel. Floyd and I wrote about this. And they lost because Intel was on the learning curve. Intel had the volume. Intel had the far better economics, and they drove the industry. Frankly, the only reason why AMD, survived is because in the original PC, IBM insisted that they had a second source. And so Intel said, all right, okay, we get it. And so IBM enabled AMD to live. And then, of course, a lot happened, and the whole Jerry Sanders thing and moving the fabs. But the ancient history, or the early history of PCs, IBM, in its hubris, said, well, we're not going to make the silicon, and we're not going to make the operating system. Those are just toys. Don Estridge, he died in a plane crash, ran the PC division. He was instrumental, I think, in that decision to outsource. But they wanted a second source for silicon, and that basically preserved AMD's future. So,
yeah, I mean, I think the real conversation would be,
so who's the second source to, my point though is, who's the second source to NVIDIA?
I think Broadcom going to enable other people to do it.
Broadcom CUDA, that one? No, I believe, I mean, listen, I'm not saying Broadcom's going away. Broadcom's got a differentiated business model. I like their model better than most. Yeah. Although Intel's the hottest stock in the world right now.
Nvidia wins the long game as they keep pumping out the supply chain, because they'll be a supplier on both fronts. Here's the big factories, the systems that they sell that are highly integrated, very dense.
There's no CUDA alternative. I mean, developers, this is why Jensen wants, his stack to be ubiquitous, because the developers, the affinity, the tooling, the libraries, the backwards compatibility. I mean, it's just, they are sitting pretty, unless they blow it. They could, they could trip, but.
The area of innovation where there's going to be a big yes or no kind of thing happening is going to be telcos. Because the telcos, and I brought up wireless earlier, and I'll say it again. Networking, you mentioned KV cache and InfiniBand. That made the clusters. They made the factories work. Okay. And outside of the centralized factories, the networking protocols are Spectrum, that we all know, and unlicensed Spectrum, which is Ethernet Wi-Fi. Okay. So the telcos have networks. They have people who run on those networks, like carriers like Verizon, which, by the way, was down this week. A huge issue on the East Coast. Everyone in New York was freaking out, and in the South as well. Verizon, AT&T, they control the wireless spectrum for those user services. Okay, that's networking. Okay, you put a factory and you connect those protocols with Ethernet, which I'm suggesting will happen, then you have a whole nother networked edge. Edge will not work without networking. The power piece can be managed through the smaller devices. They won't require a lot of power and cooling. You can run software on them, like a CUDA. A CUDA moment at the edge is going to be a big story. But also, you can run other stuff, like models. So you push models down to an edge node, edge factory, it follows you. So I think the idea of models are going to be key. And retail, they talked about this a lot. Okay, they were talking about, how do I make more money? How do I make better user experiences? How do I do real personalization? And real personalization is having a user not have to jump from one app or one network to the other while they're in the commerce mode. So if I'm shopping or whatever, I don't want to have to turn on one app and then turn on another one, or I can't get the corporate network. That's all going to be seamless. So I think that's going to be a value prop. And the telecom companies can make a ton of money. They got the data and they got the networks. All they got to do is do a deal with Nvidia or whoever, and mainly Nvidia, is nobody else. And they now can sell new services to enterprises, to consumers, pass through retail on a rev share. They become the InfiniBand moment for the edge. You can't have the factories without the network. So to me, that's where I'm looking heavily, is will the telecom people extract that value? Because they can. Now, they missed the boat during the cloud wave because the middlemen made the money. App Store from Apple, Google, the mobile generation was made, most of the money was made by those marketplaces. And that's a middleman. So telcos could have had some of that. I don't think that it was gettable, but they could have tried. But now more than ever, I think it's incumbent upon the telcos to saying, look, if I'm going to control the end-to-end connectivity of a user, customer they have, and they got the data, and they got the network, they're in a perfect position to cut a deal with Nvidia or whoever to light up those services. And I would change the architecture to be data-centric, not voice-centric, and change all the radios that they have and the base stations and the towers to do it. It's an easy decision. If you want to survive and persevere the potential death sentence that's going to come your way, I mean, they will go down like the drain so fast. If they don't, someone else will.
No, we've been talking about this at MWC for sure, right? I mean, this is a great theme that you're bringing up, and
this will be the report I'm going to drop at MWC. It's going to be the first report that says, if the hyperconverged edge doesn't happen, all the promise of agents goes by the wayside. The consumer experiences and having personal agents, business agents, retail agents, because remember, agents are going to be everywhere. Businesses will have their own agents, users will have their own agents, and those agents have to traverse old school things like network access.
What did you say? What did you say at SuperCloud 6?
Problem.
SuperCloud 6, I think you said AI needs a supercloud. That's right. It's got a.
I was talking to Lambda yesterday, and they said we're a supercloud. They actually used the word. I didn't even prompt them. Like, yeah, all right, hey, supercloud.
Oh, you hear that?
You'll get back on
Fitzgerald
radar again. He'll be
Charles
all over
Fitzgerald.
it. But
every now and then I'll bust his balls and put something out on Twitter, and of course he comes back. He's relentless and very good. He's the king of snark. Charles Fitzgerald, love that guy.
I mean, so much news going on. A lot of Anthropic had great news. They have Cowork. So Google debuted the Universal Commerce Protocol to streamline the agent shopping experience. Anthropic answered with Quad, Cowork, Salesforce. We covered them on theCUBE. They just launched their own sales bot, but now generally available. Box is still continuing doing great. Aaron Levy has really turned his company into an AI company. We've been documenting Box's journey or trajectory change for over a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Saw Aaron on TV the other day. Yeah. Did you see that note in Rob's note about the Workday survey? They did a survey that said some 85 respondents in this Workday survey, this big survey, you know, well-funded, said that AI saved, this is so good, AI saved 1 to 7 hours a week, but more than a third of that time savings was lost to correcting errors, rewriting, and verifying content. And only 14% reported consistently positive outcomes from AI. We need better AI. So we've gone, John, from wow, this is awesome, shock and awe, to like skeptics and, you know, critics. It's pretty amazing where we are now. To your point, we are in the third. To my point, we're in the third inning.
Let's talk about that survey. Let's talk about that survey, because I think this I could read into a little bit. And tell me if you think this is right. So I would believe that survey to be true. And the respondents that they had probably were not power users. I did my year in review on ChatGPT. They have a thing like Spotify where they thing.
Right. Me too.
I'm in the top 1% user base in terms of activity. So here's my premise on this. I have personally gotten so good at using AI that I know what errors will come out based on my prompting skills. So I've gotten pretty savvy at reducing the overhead of error correcting. So question to you is, do you agree that usage of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, as you use it, you get better? For example, when I'm writing stories now, it becomes really a great aid for me to kind of save me hours on story construction when I have all my raw materials. But I already know what it does, and I'm not trying to make the story from AI. I let it do the scaffolding that I don't want to spend the time doing. That's why coding is so hot right now.
I 100% agree. And I go further that power users like you and me and many others are going to confer advantage to the non-power users, and AI is just going to keep getting better and better and better. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, and Jensen actually made this point on stage in DC. If you get adoption, that will give you an advantage. So adoption is now a new KPI, and that's why some companies, I saw in the news some articles, I think we published on SiliconANGLE, that said in the reviews of management, CEOs are saying, if you're not using AI, then that's going to be a ding, or in some cases, termination. So, you know, there's absolutely a kind of learn the ropes. It's like riding a bike. Once you get better at it, then you start doing tricks, right? So, like, to me, that's the key. I think these surveys tend to scare people, just like that MIT shitty survey that came out that said, oh, X% of agentics fail, giving the impression through the reporting that nothing's happening, right? So when I talk to people, certainly here at the retail where there's money on the line, there's specific examples of top line revenue. So it's just how people are orientating themselves to the AI is causing false positives on certain stories. You can look for any story you want and show me a person, I'll show you the crime, right? That's the expression. So here, these surveys actually don't mean much in the long game. I think this survey will speak specifically to, it saves me a lot of time, but then I got to waste time correcting. That just means you're just not a good driver of AI. You're not steering it properly. You're not grounding it with the right data. So I think this is a tell sign of kind of where we're at. And, you know, with agents, I think it's going to get faster, because once agents figure out what the workflows are, then then you curate once, then you're in business, right? So as you're learning, I think that's going to be an agent issue this year, is people leaning on the magic of agents, when in reality, it's just like programming. You got to give the agent a task. It has to have a clean workflow. To your data gang podcast you just did, if the data sucks, the agents will suck. If the real-time data access in real time, it's going to only work off the data it has.
And the agents,
fed what it has.
right?
So I think that's going to be.
The data informs the code. It's not humans writing the code, of course. And then the agents will have to learn from the reasoning traces of the humans who are providing that, feedback. And then they'll be increasingly trusted. The big thing in the data gang was, the buzzkill is going to be governance, security. And I had the chief architect of State Street on last year at Snowflake Summit, and he said, look, our mantra, Zuck, move fast and break things. Our mantra is move fast, don't break things. Well, I think what's going to happen is with AI is people are going to move fast and things are going to break, and they're going to keep moving fast. And there's going to be a lot of stories about security breaches and governance problems and, headlines and things of that, but it's not going to stop progress. People are going to move fast.
The other observation this week that I learned was during the Rubrik event that we had. They sponsored us.
But the AI in healthcare, med tech,
cyber resilience, which we've been doing all last year with Cohesity, Rubrik, all the top people, is going to be big because the ransomware stuff. You saw the Verizon hack. That some are speculating that was also kind of a hack too. But the resilience piece in hospitals specifically, I didn't know this. I was corrected by these two great guests we had on, an FBI veteran for 28 years, Secret Service veteran for 28 years.
Where are you going with this?
The agents.
What'd you learn?
I learned that the American hospitals are critical infrastructure. I did not know that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I did know that. Yeah.
And so the ransomwares are so bad, and they're so good that it's now a national issue. So cyber resilience, that's just one example where you can point to disrupted operations can cause death. The stats are, well, the guy died on the way to the hospital on a heart attack. Is that due because of ransomware? Probably, but they can't put the number. It's hard to count that, right? But it's happening. But in businesses, if you're not recovering off the hacks, you're dead, right? That's going to be a huge issue. So I think this year you're going to start to see a lot more cyber resilience with AI because of the proactive work that they're doing. So Rubrik shared with me this week that they're doing stuff with AI that helps them on the proactive side sees the incoming attacks and can prepare what operational playbooks go into play if something happens, and also getting recoveries back on the sequence of the right systems. So it's really going to become a very agentic. It's going to be very AI oriented on recovery and operations. So I think that's something that's kind of not a sexy story, but business operations will be impacted by how you respond to the hacks, how you're using AI, and of course everyone's talking about the top line dollars now, and that's what we're the story. But AI is about revenue and operations. It's all it is, right? All the top stories we're covering have a business model
of HIPAA,
to them,
right? Because of HIPAA, you get that data, and the medical community freaks out. You tell them you're going to release the data if you don't pay me. It's a lucrative target for the bad guys. RSA, I'm sure we'll be talking about that. It's a good theme to poke at RSA. Dude, the travel schedule this year is ridiculous. Your schedule, my schedule. I'm looking at it going, oh my God. We got Human X coming up. We got Ray's Summit. We got all the normal CUBE stuff. How come you're not at Davos with all the other mucky mucks? You could have gone.
Oh, because BitGo's going public. I was going to go to Davos. I got invited by AWS, General Catalyst. They're having a big thing there. Teresa Carlson's there. A lot going on. I turned it down because we're going to be live streaming the BitGo IPOs, another crypto IPO, next Thursday from the show floor here at the NYSE. Super excited by that. And then, there's a lot more IPOs coming, Dave. There's a huge interest. And since NYSE was acquired by ICE, the parent company was a $100 billion company, the IPO market here at the NYSE is hot. Tech stocks are coming here. It's a whole nother NYSE. It's not your grandfather's NYSE. And so you're going to start to see, people are gravitated by the Wall Street iconic location, the innovation formula that they have, and plus their customers. ICE spends tons of money on tech. So I think tech IPOs in the NYSE will be a banner year for them. I think they're going to put a real dent in the NASDAQ. We're already seeing signs of that. And it's kind of cool because this is where our studio is. So the NYC Wired program, a CUBE original that we're powering and running and funding, is going to be really successful because it merges the technical themes that we talk about with the capital markets. And I was talking to Peter Tuchman, the Einstein on Wall Street, and a couple other entrepreneurs that are in here today. They were pumped, and I said to them, I go, look at this market, the market that everyone's covered, the market. Technology is the market now, Dave. Okay, so our content is resonating, and what I mean by that is technology is the market because individual investors, institutional investors, businesses, common people actually care about the tech that we cover. And the stocks that are the best are tech stocks. And the companies that are tech stocks have tech in them. So, technology is now the market. And so we're like doing stuff here that's all tech. So it's resonating. So I think that you're going to start to see that become a mainstream analyst beat for everybody, every vertical. I mean, retail, who would have thought retail would have been an AI show? It was pretty awesome. 40,000 people in New York, not talking about the next device to take an order, point of sale thing, or whatever retail stuff is in the retail world, and all the retail kind of trade content, trade magazine or trade content. No, it's Nvidia. It's an edge solution. How do I automate the experiences? How do I converge my app into physical? How do I make my retail stores better? I mean, one company's going in and basically changing the shelvings and the store layout every day with robotics based upon what's happening in the city. It's like, wow. So like, imagine that. You go into a store one day and the completely different store the next. Robots work at night and swap the shelves out. I mean, that's where
it's amazing what you see. I was down. I mean, I don't do nearly as many at the NYSE as you do, but I interviewed the CEO of a company. They were doing they raised a bunch of dough. They basically put these kiosks, they're big giant kiosks. They're big, like rooms, like the size of my studio here. And they're basically automated convenience stores, 24/7, no humans, 2 robots. So they're redundant. You get an app, you order your shit, you go in, you show them the code, boom, they give it to you, you're done. It's like there's this space, you just need space in a parking lot, and they're going to crush it. I mean, they have AI that predicts, it restocks. I mean, it's incredible. If there's a problem, they what's that?
The one company we're following, Lambda, they're one of the neo clouds, Vulture, Lambda, Nebius.
Yeah.
The Lambda guys have a different view. They use the word super cloud, which I love. When I asked them about how all these aggregators are coming out with pricing and GPUs, they said we want to be a super cloud, and their position is this: they're targeting system architects and developers. If you look at all the successful companies in AI, whether it's a neo cloud or a hyperscaler, the ones that have a systems focus, okay, and developers are the winners. And if you look at the developer community, the software is going to be the key for these autonomous environments like the shopping you mentioned and others. The autonomy piece is going to be a huge watch area for us this year. And I think that's a 2027 story, but you're going to start to see the foundation being poured in 2026, because to set up autonomous workflows, you got to get the agents right. So I think, if you look at the software, it's essentially middleware, Dave, right? I was talking to one of the guests I had is old school like me. I'm like, yeah, the old school stack, infrastructure, middleware, and apps. That's what's going on in AI. And if you look at Amazon's stack, it's the same thing. The middleware is all this agentic stuff. It's the software. You mentioned CUDA. Man, they nailed it there, and they're going to infuse CUDA to enable a middleware market. NIMS, Nemotron, all these things that Nvidia
libraries.
Has going to be. Yeah, and it's really interesting because now the speed to develop is once, right? You do one programmable layer and then let the developers do it. So I think you watch the developers right this year. It's going to be very interesting to see as they move from cloud native to AI native, what the trends are. And AI native is going, we're going to see how the developers are dealing with model, the velocity of traction, and the speed, right? It's going to be a game of like, okay, there'll be an unfair advantage to your point earlier in the pod about like if you move fast, you get an advantage. So I think the AI native software model will be very interesting to watch this year. And that'll be a tell sign for which platform, whether it's a cloud or hyperscaler or a neo cloud or AI factory or some derivative version of that, like a Dell AI factory, for instance. Well, that's going to be the winners. And if you're building a great system and don't have any developer traction and software enablement, you're screwed, basically. So that's going to be a tell sign for the winners and losers. So we'll
Well,
watch it closely.
and if
Now,
I were one of these,
that's a
if
whole
I were one of these labs, frontier labs, chasing consumer AGI, I would put that in the back burner and I would go hard after what you're talking about here, which is, enterprise productivity. I mean, LLMs,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think the business model there is that attractive. I think it's actually unattractive, but the potential to power a new software layer and create the next great software company and drive, Michael Dell's, we got $115 trillion global economy. If we can improve productivity by 10%, I'd want to go after that 10% with that software layer and basically competing essentially with the SaaS vendors, restructuring the software business and making every company truly a software company. We heard that, over the last 10 years, every software company is a software company. Guess what? Every company's not a software company because software is really hard. So if these foundation model vendors can make becoming a software company much easier, then they're going to make a lot of money. If they don't and they chase AGI and all this consumer, holy grail, who knows? Maybe, Ray Kurzweil's right, and AGI will allow us to live forever, and we don't have to work again. I wouldn't necessarily bet on that as my business model.
Ali Ghodsi said it best this year on theCUBE, last year on theCUBE. I mean,
What did he say? He's amazing.
Let's just solve the basic problems we have now. Forget AGI, because that's a great mission, North Star, and certainly you can have pound your fist and be your religion, but it's going to happen down the road. Right now, there's stuff happening in front of us and these companies where there's like enterprise that may seem boring, but it's lucrative as hell, right? So you crack code.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another area that I think is misunderstood, that's hiding in plain sight, is the role of computer vision, right? If you look at Motive AI, they filed to go public. I talked to the founding team there, and all the physical AI stuff in robotics. Computer vision is the most underreported technology that has the most punch for value. These models, great, words, linguistics, speech, text, great, all good, moving along, great, reasoning, thinking, great. More of that, keep chugging on. That's what everyone's talking about, but no one's talking about the impact of computer vision and what AI does with all that data, because the data ingestion of computer vision is massive. Nvidia loves it, they talk about it, but the mainstream, no one's talking about computer vision. I mean,
it's interesting. Do you remember you interviewed him at Ray's Summit, I think, Daniel Dines, the CEO of UiPath. I remember him telling me years ago that our secret sauce is we have computer vision. And of course, then they simplified it. And of course, RPA is like passe now. But it just dawned on me. It's like, okay, what's the future of, companies like that? And computer vision, like you said, there's a play for it in this era in a big way at the edge.
All the hardware guys that are, again, bringing the Nvidia kind of software model to the table, all the hardware and cameras, the best companies that are doing the best in AI are building software down to the core firmware of the device. So it's not just bolting on a camera and connecting to the internet. The cameras themselves are purpose built with enabling software to control the device. And that's why I love the factories at the edge, because retail, obviously, they can get, they see your face, that little square. Oh, this Dave Vellante. Well, they can certainly get your face, but how are they going to know it's you unless they look up your face in a database? Well, guess what? If you opt in for that, great. Now, Amazon just walk out technology in retail. They're completely privacy based and they're proud of it. I'm like, that might be a fatal flaw, guys. You got to enable identity. Why wouldn't I want AI to work on my behalf once I walk in the store? Okay, that shirt you wanted that it's in your inbox that's been waiting on is actually on rack 5. Go get it. So that's, to me, like these kinds of things, like I just mentioned with the buying scenario, That's not technically possible today. It just is not like, it's not possible. It will not code. There's no code to make that scenario just happen. Now, is it possible technically? Yes, but shit's got to change. So, okay, there you are, facial recognition. Are you who you are? How do you verify that? Now, how do I find out that I've been shopping? I need your search history, shopping history. Well, it's on your in your cart on your home PC. Oh, how do I go get at? They got to go through the network. That's Verizon or Spectrum in New York City or any other carrier. So these network boundaries that were once traditional plumbing are going to be completely changed by like the Nvidias of the world, because factories can handle all that with agents. So I think computer vision is going to be huge. We're already seeing it in specialty apps like cars. Massive. But again, we'll see how that plays out. Human X we're going to be this year. Looks like I'm going to be at the Paris Blockchain Week in April 15th because of the big event there. You know, Ledger's in Paris. We visited their office. Google next. theCUBE is already, a lineup is already set in April 22nd, this early. Nutanix next. SAS is having their 50th anniversary. IBM Think in May. ServiceNow, DTW, Boomi World, Red Hat Summit, Amazon Web Services Financial Services event here. Cannes Film Festival, Acti Global in Maui. Maybe go to Greece for an Australia event. That's looking good. Snowflake Summit, Databricks Summit, AWS Summit in DC, Rubrik Forward, FinOps X, HPE Discover, Open Source Summit, Raise Summit, Wimbledon, Dave, Wimbledon, IBM.
When's that? That's July, right?
It's July, and I just saw an IBM post from the person who runs all the sports marketing. She was on a little hiatus. She posted. They just renewed their Wimbledon relationship. So IBM is the
that's a bucket list for me. That's a bucket list item. We did US Open. That was good. Wimbledon would be amazing.
That's back on the docket. Second half not fully baked in, but most of the stuff were in there. CrowdStrike, Monday.com, Octane, Cloudera,
Snowflake,
US Open, Neo4j,
Databricks, Data Summit, right? reInvent, Oracle. Definitely Oracle.
A lot of action, Dave. I mean,
no, we'll be back. We'll be back at Oracle AI World. COVID was a weird sort of thing. We were at Oracle Open World for years. We'll be back there. Dude, I gotta go.
All right. We'll see you next time, and glad we got back on the pod track. We'll be see you next week. We'll get the cadence going and keep it rolling.
Sure. All right, man.
All right. Thanks.
See you, buddy.